My name is Grace Meyers. I'm 36 years old. 20 years ago, my parents threw me out of the house just because I got pregnant in the 10th grade. That night, it was pouring rain. I stood at the door with a single suitcase while my mother pointed outside and said flatly, "You're dead to this family." It wasn't just something she said in anger. They signed papers that very night, legally removing my name from the family records and stating clearly that I and any child of mine would never be recognized as part of the family. I kept all of those documents for 20 years as proof that I had once been buried alive. I disappeared, just as they wanted. They told everyone I had moved abroad, then built a spotless reputation on my absence. And then last week, they showed up at my door, smiling. Friendly, polite, as if nothing had ever happened. They asked to meet their grandson, the grandson they had been bragging about for months, to 200 influential guests, to polish the image of their 50th anniversary celebration. They offered me $250, 000 to play along and complete the performance. But they don't know this, that grandson doesn't exist. And what they're about to see will tear apart everything they've spent 50 years building. Portland, Oregon, November 2004. On paper, the Meyers family was the kind of model family everyone admired. My father, Richard Meyers, owned the real estate law firm Meyers and Associates, established in 1987. He was a familiar face downtown, always speaking as if he were standing in a courtroom. My mother, Diane Meyers, served for years as president of the Parent-Teacher Association. She lived by politeness, rules, and the quiet power of judgmental glances. Every Sunday, as we sat in the front row at Grace Fellowship Church, dressed in perfectly coordinated outfits my mother had picked out the night before. Our family looked like a ready-made moral poster, well-behaved, polished, picture-perfect, without a single stain. But inside that house, I learned very early that there was a hierarchy. There was no such thing as everyone is loved equally. There was only this: if you enhanced the family's reputation, you were favored. If you damaged it, you were erased. My father repeated one sentence like a curse. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to destroy it. I didn't understand back then, until I became those 5 minutes. Every family has its unspoken rules. In mine, the rule was chillingly clear. If you brought pride, you were allowed to exist. If you posed a risk to the image, you were treated like a system error. My brother, Nathan, Arshar, a third-year dental student, the family's ace card. Every dinner conversation revolved around him: clinical cases, his future practice, how the Meyers name would carry on. My sister, Carolyn, Arshar, studying education, beautiful, obedient, never arguing, never stepping outside expectations. She was my mother's perfect presentation. And me, I was the unplanned child. My mother used to call me a surprise, in the tone someone uses to describe a mistake. I was born when she was 34. After 6 years of believing she was done having children, I understood very early that she never forgave me for showing up. Contempt doesn't have to be loud. It lives in the small things repeated every day: the family photo hanging in the living room without me in it, dinners where no one asked what I was studying when I made the honor roll. My father would just nod and say, not bad. Then turn to Nathan with a real question. I learned to make myself smaller. Don't ask for anything. Don't need anyone. Don't make them look at you for more than 3 seconds. In the Meyers house, being noticed was already a privilege. I met Marcus Webb at the downtown public library. Sounds ordinary, right? But to me, the library was a refuge. No one compared me to Nathan there. No one looked at me like I was the extra child. I went 3 afternoons a week, saying I was studying, when really, I just needed somewhere I could breathe. Marcus went to Jefferson High, a public school my parents acted like didn't exist. He was 17. Worked part-time at his uncle's auto repair shop, his hands always smelling like engine oil. But his eyes were so gentle they made me feel. One afternoon in October, I was sitting in the biography section, crying after my mother forgot to pick me up for the 3rd time that month. Marcus pulled out a chair across from me and asked softly, "Hey, are you okay?" It was such a simple question, but I swear, it had been a long time since anyone had asked me that without judgment attached. We dated in secret for 2 months. No drama. No grand promises. Marcus didn't offer me some glamorous future. He did one thing the Meyers family never had: he made me feel like I mattered. And when you're used to being forgotten, having just one person remember you is enough to make you risk everything. October 28. Liantianlingxi. I stood in the bathroom of a gas station about 3 miles from school. My hands shaking so badly, I almost dropped the pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. My first thought wasn't, "I'm going to be a mother." It was, "I'm about to be executed in that house." I told Marcus. I braced myself for him to disappear like so many boys do. But Marcus didn't run. He held my hand tightly and said, "We'll figure this out together. You're not alone." Grace. I wanted to believe him. Part of me did. But the other part, the part that had survived 16 years in the Meyers house, already knew what was coming. Because I understood my parents. I knew what they truly worshipped wasn't their children, but the eyes of other people. Their first question would never be, "Are you okay?" It would be, "What will people think I chose to tell them at Sunday dinner?" I told myself that if I spoke calmly, they would stay calm. I was foolish in the way children so often are, believing that parents would actually act like parents. I didn't know it would be my last meal in that house. Sunday, November 14. 24/7/23 p.m. The dinner table was silent as a morgue. The roast beef was dry, but I could barely swallow anyway. My heart was pounding like a hammer. My father was complaining about a real estate dispute. My mother was calculating the guest list for the church Christmas gala. Everything was perfectly proper, just like every other dinner, until I opened my mouth. "I have something to say." The whole table turned toward me. "I'm pregnant." My mother's fork clattered onto her plate. My father didn't flinch, he just went cold. "Who's the father?" I said his name, Marcus Webb. The moment my parents heard public school and auto repair shop, their faces shifted into a kind of contempt I will never forget. My mother reacted as if I had insulted her. "You're seeing some public school boy," I tried to explain. "He's a good person." My father cut me off. "What does he do? What does his father do? What kind of family is he from?" I answered each question. And with every word, it felt like I was digging my own grave. Then my father stood up. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a verdict. "You will not keep that baby. If you do, from this moment on, you are no longer part of this family." By 9:15 p.m. I was standing on the porch with one suitcase, rain slashing across my face. My mother opened the door, pointed outside, and said, "Go." My brother and sister stood upstairs, looking down. No one came out. No one said a word. I ran through the rain to the gas station on Malbury Road, shoved coins into the public payphone. My hands were shaking so badly I dialed the wrong number twice. When Marcus answered, all I managed to say was, "They kicked me out." My voice shattered. Less than 20 minutes later, his uncle's old pickup truck screeched to a stop in front of the station. Marcus jumped out before the truck had fully stopped. pulled off his jacket, wrapped it around me, and held me tight. I cried like a child. He said just one sentence that was enough to keep me alive. I'm here. You've got me. We had no plan. No money. No place to sleep. Just $300. A pickup truck with failing brakes. And a future that looked completely uncertain. And then Margaret Torres, our 2-year-old neighbor, opened her door. She looked at me, soaked to the bone. She looked at my tiny suitcase. Then she said, like it was an order, "Get in here. Stay as long as you need." That night, I wasn't standing in the rain anymore. If you've ever been turned away by your own family, or found yourself standing between walking away and trying to survive, comment number 1 below this video. 2 weeks later, we left Mrs. Torres's house and moved to Seattle. We rented a $425 a month studio apartment above a laundromat. The smell of bleach clung to everything, like a constant reminder, you're surviving dollar to dollar. But the real blow wasn't poverty. The real blow was the letter from my father, 3 days after I was thrown out. I received a certified letter signature required, as if he was afraid I wouldn't fully understand just how thoroughly I had been dealt with. Inside were 3 pages of legal documents, written in language as cold as a sales contract. In short, Grace Elizabeth Meyers relinquishes all rights to inheritance, and the Meyers family bears no legal or moral responsibility toward her or toward any dependents thereof. Any dependent thereof. Those 3 words felt like a slap across my face. Because at that moment, I was pregnant. Which meant they didn't just erase me, they erased my child before she was even born. No need to see her face. No need to hear her heartbeat. Just a stamp on paper. And it was done. I kept that document for 20 years. Not to claim anything back, but to make sure I never forgot some people are called family, yet behave like strangers. On July 6, Liang Chen Wu, at Harborview Medical Center in Seattle, my child was born. Not a grandson like they would later imagine. A baby girl. I named her Lily Grace Meyers Webb. 7 pounds. 4 ounces. 10 fingers. 10 toes. She had Marcus's brown eyes and my stubborn chin. The moment Lily entered the world, she cried at the top of her lungs. I remember thinking, cry, baby. Cry as loud as you can. Never let anyone make you shrink yourself, because I knew how poisonous it felt to be treated like you didn't exist. I was still foolish a few more times. I sent a birth announcement to Portland. No reply. I mailed a photo from her first birthday. Silence. By her second birthday, I stopped. Not because I stopped loving my parents, but because I understood I was knocking on a door that had been welded shut. From that point on, I stopped asking for their recognition. I focused on one thing, raising my daughter and staying alive. Because Lily didn't need a prestigious family. Lily needed a mother who didn't collapse. Then life hit me without warning. March 15. Langsenling Iser. Marcus was driving home after a night shift on Aurora Avenue when a truck ran a red light and crashed straight into him. The police knocked on my door. Standing stiff like they were delivering a sentence, he died at the scene. Marcus was 26 years old. Lily was 4. You think the tragedy stopped there? No. It threw in one more ugly truth. Sometimes a human life is reduced to a number. The insurance payout from Marcus's company was $12. Ling ling ling. That was it. $12,000 for a man who had tried to carry the whole world on his back so his family wouldn't go hungry. I held that check and felt like I was holding society's cold reply. Here. Take this. Now deal with it yourself. I was 22. A single mother. A 4-year-old child. $12,000. And no one to call. No parents. No siblings. No prestigious family. I could have collapsed. Many people would have. The weak ones use that as an excuse to stay broken. But I didn't. Because I looked at Lily and understood something simple: if I fell, she would be buried with me. I didn't have time to grieve endlessly. After the tears, who would pay for milk? Who would keep a roof over her head before Marcus died? I had already taken small jobs decorating apartments, refreshing neighbors' living rooms, staging homes for real estate agents who wanted quick sales. No degree, no reputation, just an eye for design and a stubborn mind. People used to say I had taste, that I could turn a cramped space into a home. After the funeral, I threw myself into work like a drowning person clinging to a piece of wood. During the day, I worked on projects. At night, I made supply lists, taught myself design, and photographed my own portfolio. When Lily slept, I worked. When she was awake, I worked and parented at the same time. Back then, life had only one rule: earn money by any honest means, so your child doesn't go without. I began to understand something: pain doesn't disappear on its own. You only have two choices. You can hold on to it and rot, or you can turn it into fuel. I chose the second. One client at a time. One room at a time. One invoice at a time. I didn't get over the pain. I walked straight through it, back straight, asking no one for permission. And from that moment on, I stopped waiting for a miracle from my family. Because the real miracle was this: I stood up on my own. For 20 years, the Meyers family never made a single call. Not one letter. Not once did they ask whether I was alive or dead. I got used to the idea that, in their version of the story, I simply didn't exist. Until last week. Tuesday, November 5th. 2024, 6:47 p.m. I had just gotten home from a client meeting an $800 renovation contract. My mind was still full of ceiling fixtures, upholstery fabrics, wall tones. As I turned onto my street, I saw a black Mercedes S-Class with Oregon plates parked right in front of my gate. My heart froze. Two people were standing at my door: a silver-haired man whose shoulders had started to sag with age, and a woman still holding herself as straight as a ruler. The posture of someone who has spent her entire life afraid of being seen as less than perfect. Richard and Diane Meyers. My parents. I could have turned the car around, driven straight to a hotel, and pretended none of this was happening. But no. I'm 36 years old. I own a company. I built my life with my own hands. I don't run anymore. I stepped out of the car and walked directly toward them. And the first thing my mother said after 20 years of silence wasn't, "Are you okay?" It was, "We know you have a son." I looked at them the way you look at strangers. My father stood upright, his eyes scanning my house like he was assessing property value. My mother wore that polished, respectable smile, but her hands gripped her handbag tightly, like she was afraid of losing control. I asked bluntly, "Why are you here?" My mother answered immediately, "No small talk. We want to meet our grandson." My father nodded as if he were closing a deal. "We'd like to reconnect as a family." I almost laughed. For 20 years, I didn't exist in their lives. For 20 years, they told people I had moved abroad. And now they were standing at my door, talking about family as if they hadn't thrown me out into the rain. Then they showed their hand. Their 50th anniversary celebration at the Heathman Hotel. 200 guests, church leaders, Rotary members, even local officials. And lately, people had started asking, whatever happened to the Meyers' youngest daughter? So now they needed me to appear. Not because they missed me, but because they were afraid of exposure. And more importantly, they had been bragging for months about having a grandson to polish the image of their celebration. If you've ever known someone who only remembers you when they need something, comment number 1 below this video. My father opened his leather briefcase and pulled out a blank check, placing it on the table like he was cleaning up a mess with money. "We're prepared to compensate you," he said, his voice cold and precise. $250,000. The conditions were simple in true Meyers fashion. I would bring my son to the anniversary party, stay exactly 3 hours, take a few family photos, it smile on qui, nod at the right moments, and then disappear. Like a prop rented by the hour. My mother added more. They were willing to reinstate me into the family trust, equal shares with Nathan and Carolyn. The total estate was somewhere around $3 million. After saying it, she looked at me with that expression that meant, "See, I'm being generous." I stared at the check and felt sick. Because apparently, in their minds, 20 years of being erased had a price tag. And worse, they weren't buying forgiveness. They were buying silence. Then my father dropped a sentence just sharp enough to make it clear this wasn't a request. It was a threat. "If necessary, we'll contact your child directly." Meaning, if I didn't play along, they would write their own script and drag my child into it. I hadn't even responded when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Lily appeared wearing a UW hoodie, holding a psychology textbook, just a normal one. 9-year-old, studying on a regular evening. And that normalcy was exactly what froze the room. "Mom? What's going on?" Lily asked. My mother shot to her feet. Her eyes swept over Lily, then snapped back to me. Her voice tightened, like she had just seen a ghost. "Who is this girl?" I stepped forward, placing myself between them and my daughter. "This is Lily, my daughter. Your granddaughter." My father's mouth opened slightly, as if his brain needed a moment to reload. Daughter. You filled in the rest yourselves." I cut in. Lily looked straight at them. No flinching. No shrinking. No asking permission. "So you're my grandparents, the ones who threw my mom out when she was pregnant with me?" My mother recoiled as if slapped. "No. That situation was complicated." "Complicated?" How Lily's voice sharpened. "Complicated when you pointed at a 16-year-old and sent her into the rain. Or complicated when you pretended she didn't exist for 20 years. My father regained his lawyer's composure. "A granddaughter is acceptable. We can adjust the narrative." Lily let out a cold laugh. I'm a real person, not a prop for your party." That night, after Lily went upstairs, I pulled out the fireproof lockbox from the back of my closet. I had barely touched it in years. Because every time I opened it, it felt like tearing open an old scar. Inside was the grave the Meyers family had prepared for me. Times, a notarized disinheritance document dated November 14. Lansenlingsu. Asterisk. The signatures of Richard Allen Meyers and Diane Elizabeth Meyers. Asterisk. Witnessed and notarized by Harold Brennan. I laid the 3 pages out on the bed like a sentence handed down in court. Then I photographed every page. Zoomed in on every line. Every seal. Every signature. I uploaded them to the cloud and created backup copies. I wasn't doing it to beg for recognition. I was doing it because I understand something now. Truth without evidence is just a story. At some point, Lily had appeared at the doorway, arms crossed over her chest. She came and sat beside me, reading every line carefully. When she finished, her eyes were red, but she didn't cry. "They really did this to you?" "Mom, yes," I answered simply. Lily set the papers down, her voice firm as a nail driven into wood. "Then they don't get to pretend anymore." I looked at my daughter and knew their little happy family performance was about to end. The next morning, I hadn't even finished my coffee when my phone buzzed. An unknown Oregon number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but I picked up. Grace. It's me, Nathan. I froze. 20 years without a single call. And now, my brother's voice deeper. Heavier. Like a man who had been carrying guilt for too long. He didn't waste time. The grandson story. It was our mother's invention. She had read an article in Seattle Met. Saw the word child. And built an imaginary perfect grandson to impress the church. The Rotary Club. And their powerful friends. Our father knew. And he went along with it for the sake of pride. Nathan swallowed hard. His voice cracked. I was a coward. Grace. That night. I watched from the window. I didn't come downstairs. I didn't protect you. He told me Carolyn had carried the guilt for years too. Then he dropped the piece of information that snapped me fully awake during the anniversary party. There would be a family moment live-streamed on the church's Facebook page, the pastor's idea. Nathan ended with one sentence. If you go, Carolyn and I will stand with you. You won't be alone anymore. And in that moment, I understood something clearly. This wasn't just a party. It was a stage. That evening, I sat at the dining table with Lily and Eleanor. I told them everything, my parents showing up at the door, demanding a grandson, offering a $250,000 check, even threatening to contact my child directly. Eleanor shook her head, her voice calm but sharp. They don't want reconciliation. They want a performance. Lily looked at me. Her eyes like ice. They're using you as a prop again, just like before. I nodded. And this time, I wasn't going to run. I'm going to the party. I said slowly. Clearly. Lily shot up from her chair. Are you crazy? You're going to let them win. I held her gaze. No. I'm not going to perform. I'm going to end their play. They've told a story about me for 20 years without me in the room. This time, I'll speak for myself. I pulled out my phone and showed them everything. Photos of the disinheritance papers. Time-stamped messages from Mrs. Torres. The Seattle Met article. They want 3 hours to cover the truth. I said, I'll use that exact stage to tell it. Lily squeezed my hand. Then I'm coming with you. They need to meet the real person, me. I called Nathan that same night. You're keeping your word. Right, don't tell them. Don't warn them. Let them be surprised. Saturday. November 2024, 6:47 p.m. The crystal ballroom at the Heathman Hotel was glowing like a glass cage built for people who like to display their virtue. Chandeliers glittered overhead. White tablecloths stretched perfectly smooth. The floral arrangements probably cost more than my first month's rent back in Seattle. 200 guests in suits and gowns. Champagne in hand. Talking about investments. Golf. Connections. Lily and I walked in together. She wore a navy dress, simple. Sharp. I wore black, clean. Professional. Impossible to ignore. At the far end of the room stood the stage and the church's livestream crew. I could see the little red live icon blinking. Good. The more witnesses, the better. On stage, my parents stood at the center of a circle of well-wishers. My mother in champagne silk. My father in a dark blue suit, smiling with the confidence of people who believe they've already won at life. They hadn't seen me yet. But heads were starting to turn. Whispers rippled through the room. That's her. From the Seattle Met article, the Meyers' youngest daughter. I thought she moved to Europe. Lily and I walked straight toward the stage. The crowd parted not out of politeness, but because they could smell drama. Then my mother looked up. Her smile froze. My father was mid-sentence at the microphone. For 50 years of marriage, we've learned that family is everything. That was when my mother saw me. Her face drained of color. Her hand clutched my father's arm as if to steady him. He followed her gaze and stopped cold in the middle of his sentence. I didn't slow down. I climbed the 3 steps to the stage. The live stream camera swung toward me instinctively. 200 pairs of eyes, locked onto every step. On the screen beside the stage, Facebook Live comments were flying. I took the microphone from my father's hand before he could adjust the narrative. Good evening. My name is Grace Meyers. I looked directly at the audience. To many of you here, I'm the daughter you were told moved to Europe. The room went silent. I didn't move to Europe. I was thrown out of my home on November 14. Launtenlingsi. Because I was pregnant at 16. I pulled the folded documents from my bag and held them up. This is the notarized disinheritance letter my father sent me 3 days later. It states that the family bears no responsibility for me, or... I pointed toward Lily. That dependent is my daughter. Their granddaughter. And the grandson they've been bragging about for months. He doesn't exist. If you believe the truth should be spoken directly in front of people who live off appearances, comment number 1 below this video. The air in the room felt sucked out. My father reached for the microphone. Grace. This is not the place. I held it firmly. My voice calm but sharp as glass. Then where is the place? Dad. For 20 years. Did you give me any place to speak? I turned toward the audience, then looked straight into the livestream camera. Last week, they came to my house and put a $250,000 check on my table. The condition: that I bring an imaginary grandson here tonight so they could show him off. They didn't come out of love. They came because they needed me to patch the hole in their false narrative. My father began stumbling over words, trying to clarify. My mother started crying. But I wasn't there to listen to explanations. I was there to close the file. I spoke slowly, clearly, every word deliberate. I'm not suing. I'm not asking for inheritance. The disinheritance papers from 20 years ago still stand. I don't need any of it. But starting today, there is a boundary if they ever fabricate stories about me again or attempt to contact Lily without permission. I will release every document publicly, the papers, the photos, the witnesses. Then I delivered the final line. I didn't come here to destroy anything. I came here to stop being erased. I took Lily's hand and walked off the stage. Behind us, the crystal ballroom erupted like a disturbed hive. No one was sipping champagne anymore. People were whispering, pointing, pulling out their phones, texting like they were watching a building burn in real time. Pastor Harrison stepped forward, his face tight with strain. I caught fragments of his voice calling my parents' names. Richard, Diane, we need to speak privately. My father stood frozen, still holding the microphone like it was evidence in a trial. His eyes darting around the room, searching for an exit that didn't exist. We walked through the crowd as it parted again. Some people looked at me with pity. I didn't need it. Some looked afraid, realizing they had believed a lie for 20 years. Others avoided eye contact altogether, ashamed. We've had dinner with them for years, and never once asked where the youngest daughter went. When we stepped outside, the November wind cut across our faces. Lily squeezed my hand and asked softly, Mom, we did the right thing, didn't we? I pulled her into my arms. We did one thing, I said. We told the truth, the consequences. That's the price they pay for their choices. And in that moment, I knew their 50-year performance had just been shattered by 3 minutes of truth. The consequences came faster than I expected. Within hours, clips of the live stream had been cut and shared everywhere. By midnight, the shares were climbing fast. The next morning, someone uploaded it to YouTube with a headline straight out of a tabloid. Woman exposes 2-0 Year family lie, at parents' anniversary party. The views shot up like gasoline catching fire. While Portland was in chaos, I was sitting in my Seattle office, answering client emails. And here's the irony, more people started reaching out to me. Not out of pity, but because they saw strength. They saw someone who refused to be erased. Messages flooded my company inbox, not just about design projects, but about family times. Your video made me call my brother after 12 years. Asterisk. I was cut off too. Thank you for saying what I never could. I'm a teen mom. You gave me hope. Truth does two things. It shatters what's fake, and it draws the right people closer. And in the middle of that storm, I realized something. They lost their reputation. And I finally got to live as someone who was no longer erased from her own story. Thanksgiving 2024 was the first time my dining table was full enough for laughter to fill the room. Lily sat on my right, Eleanor on my left. Mrs. Torres flew in, laughing as she showed the kids how to fold napkins properly. Nathan and Carolyn came too, sitting in the very room my parents had thought they could buy me back into just 2 weeks earlier. I understood something painful, but freeing. I had wasted 20 years hurting over a family that never truly wanted me. My real family. They're the ones who stay when you hit rock bottom. My father remains silent. My mother calls occasionally now. Her voice softer. No longer commanding. I haven't forgiven them. Maybe I never will, but I don't need them to survive anymore. I look at Lily and I know this. A beautiful ending isn't tearful reconciliation. A real ending is this: I am seen. My daughter is respected. And we will never again shrink ourselves just to exist. If your home ever made you bow your head just to be allowed to stay, listen carefully. Setting boundaries isn't revenge. It's survival.